Hello, my name's Eric. Welcome to my little film about a tank on a beach in Lincolnshire. Well, the remains of a tank. Well, in northeast Lincolnshire, just north of Theddlethorpe, there's a little lane that heads off Churchill Lane towards the sea, and at the end of the lane is a car park. There's usually lots of spaces in the car park, and then there's a little path goes between the dunes down to the beach. The beach opens up and you can see for miles, and unless you're very unlucky, you very rarely see many other people there. Now, as you hit the sand and the vegetation ends, there's a path that cuts across you. So if you turn left along that path, keep going for about 500 meters, on your right you'll see a little brown rectangle in the distance, and that's the remains of the tank. Remember to keep off the dunes, off where the vegetation is, because it's a very fragile ecosystem. And to the north of it, a couple of miles, we've got Donanook, where there's seals. So there's lots of lovely wildlife, and it's a very pretty place to go. This is what you see as you approach from a distance. You see these little rectangles sticking out the sand. I've been lucky every time I've been there, the tide's been out, but there's water near it, so presumably at high spring tides the water comes up to the tank, so it might be worth checking the tide tables if you go and visit it. But as you can see with the beach, I didn't wait for there to be no one in the view. There's practically never ever anyone in the view there. Miles and miles of beautiful beaches. So what is this tank that's on there? What is it? Well, it's a British cruiser tank, and the cruiser tank is an idea that the British had between the wars of a lightish tank. Not a big heavy one, but a lightish tank that could be like sort of motorised cavalry that can chug around and look after itself. And this is an A34 Comet. They're first used in combat in January 1945. They were going to equip up a couple of units in late 44, but the Ardennes offensive kicked off, the Battle of the Bulge, and so the British were using Shermans still, but the 11th Armoured Division were properly equipped with it in early January 45. The Germans were rather a spent force in early 45, and so it didn't see many major sort of clashes or action, but helped with the British when they crossed the Rhine and moved into Germany. About 1958-59, sources vary, the British stopped using them. Some other countries bought the tanks, so Somalia, South Africa, Ireland, Burma, Cuba, Finland, carrying on using them. By the sort of 70s, most of them, because of the lack of spares, had stopped using them. There is a reference on a Wikipedia page to the Burmese having one appearing in a parade in Burma in 2021. So ironically, a tank that was used to try and liberate Europe from fascism is now being used by the rather nasty Burmese military, who have not got a great human rights record. There's a few surviving examples of ones looking a lot more pristine than this one. I've seen the ones at the Muckleborough collection in Norfolk, and there's one in the Imperial War Museum in Duxford. There's also examples in Bovington, and if you're in Ireland, in the Republic, at the Carrara Camp Museum. This example seems to be placed there with some other vehicles. Around 1965-ish, was used throughout the 70s as a target for the RAF. This is part of the Cold War, where they needed pilots to have practice of shooting tanks down on the ground. By the late 70s, this range on this beach was abandoned. They removed all the other targets, but the remains of this tank was left. Probably it had been sunk into the sand and it was too difficult to dig out. The engine's a V12. It's related to the same engine that was used in the Spitfire. There's only about 5 of the cylinders left when I was there. I saw a picture that someone had posted online from a year or two ago when there were 6 cylinders. So it looks like things are coming off it, or people are taking souvenirs when they visit it. So the thing's slowly rotting away and slowly becoming part of the this sort of natural landscape and being eroded away. British cruisers, the cruiser tank. It was a good idea between the wars, but I think the British often found during the wars these tanks were, because they were designed for speed, were often under armoured. It's part of a progression of ideas. So you've got the Cromwell before it, which is the tank on the left. The Cromwell was very angular. By the time it went into battle in Northern Europe in 1944, the British had trouble with tanks that had been unreliable, so they tested the Cromwell before they put it into practice. If they'd been a bit more bold perhaps and put it into the North Africa campaign, perhaps it would have got a better reputation, but ended up in France and pushing through the Low Countries with the British in 44, 45. Its armour wasn't as good as they hoped. Its gun wasn't as powerful as it needed to be to get through some of the German armour. So they tried to put in a new gun, improve the armour, but Cromwell wasn't brilliant. So the Comet, the example that's on the beach, the one, there's a model of it in the middle there. A Comet, more curved armour, so because you don't want flat armour, especially on the front of your turret. In case a shell hits it, you want the power and energy of the shell to be deflected. There's the Comet in the middle, and the Comet led on to the Centurion. Now the Centurion was made too late to see active service in World War II, but saw a lot of service in the Korean War. The Centurion's a more powerful, better armoured tank than the Comet or the Cromwell ever was. And the Centurion's more of a battle tank really than a cruiser, than one of these light mobile tanks. And the Centurion was a classic British post-war tank. Loads were produced, sold in loads to loads of countries, and ended up being used in the Vietnam War or the Indo-Pakistan conflict and various other conflicts around the world. So the Comets, the sort of last one, the tail end of the British cruisers as it develops into a British battle tank. So what is there to see? Well, it's lost its tracks, it's lost its turret, it's lost most of its armour plating, all but one of the hatches. There's a small front hatch that's still there, has gone. The rear drive wheels, drive shaft is still there, and you can see some of the suspension. There's me and my dog Luna exploring the tank. Have a look inside, you can see some of the pistons there, and you can see some of the gearing and the teeth of the mechanism that used to turn the turret round. But a lot of it is very full of sand and mud, so it's very difficult to see much inside, and it's been largely sort of washed away, or people have taken bits off it over the years. So I wanted to know what it would look like, so I made a kit. I brought a kit. This is the model. This is a company called Vespid that makes this. This was made in China. And if you're like me, you're used to making Airfix models, you'll find this, if you try and build this, it's quite fiddly. There was lots of little plastic bits that get them off the moulding broke, and I had to fix and repair, and the little brass moulded bits. There was a lot of swearing and cursing as I tried to put these things on it, and a lot of use of magnifying glass, but I don't think I did too bad a job. So there's the model of the tank, which took me quite some time to make, but I thought have an example of what it would look like for this film. So there's my A34 Comet. So the place today, as I say, it's beautiful. The sands seem to go on forever, and you don't see anyone. And if, like me, you've got a dog and you've got a ball for them to fetch, you can keep them amused for hours. The dunes in the background harbour lots of different birds and other wildlife, but you don't want to go on them. As I say, it's a rather fragile ecosystem where the vegetation is behind. There's beautiful walks along the coast there. If you go in the winter, it can be quite cold as the wind blows through you. Lincolnshire people call that bracing. I call it freezing, but it's still a beautiful place to go. Anyway, thanks for listening. It was worth sitting through this whole film just for that brilliant joke. Anyway, got to make tracks. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed that. Bye now.